everyone, Sonobi here. I don't normally do this before a video, but today we're canning, so I wanted to mention a few things for some of the people who are new to canning. First one, be organized. The more organized you are, the better it will be. I promise you. Sanitation is crucial. Everything has to be watched, sterilized, sanitized. It's really, really important that you work in that environment. Altitude is another one. You can't can safely if you don't know what your altitude is. So you have to know what that is. Go online, punch in where you are, and there will be stats as to what your altitude is. Always follow the manufacturer's directions for your canner, not somebody else's that you've seen online for your specific one. They're not all the same. They don't work all the same. So if you got at a garage sale, then go online, and there's usually a printed version online of pretty much every make and model that there is. Canning is very strict. If the processing time says 40 minutes and 35 minutes has come, and you think, oh my God, I'm in a rush, I gotta go, it's been 35 minutes, so good to go. No, 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 no. That's very bad. If it says 40 minutes, it means 40 minutes. It's very strict, but it's all there to keep us safe. So please go by the book. Do your research. Please, please do your research. Don't look at videos and think, well, they're doing it that way, and she's doing it that way, so I can do it that way. No, no, no. That you don't know if they're doing it right. You don't even know if I'm doing it right. The only way you're going to know for sure is if you hit the books and read, 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 and read more about it, so you can learn firsthand what is right and what is wrong. Keep your family safe. Put the pets away where they're nice and safe. And if you have children, put them aside where they're nice and safe. You don't want to spill on them. You don't want to trip over them. And if you have husbands that are underneath your feet all day, put a movie on and put them where they're safe. I know I'm going to get it for that one, but it's the truth. So I'll make sure everybody's safe. I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter if it's been 1 week or 15 years. Always approach canning with knowledge and caution. That's about the best advice that I could give you. So if there's any questions on this video, please let me know. Give me a shout, and I will try to help as best I can. So with that being said, on with the video.
I bought 37 pounds of ground meat for $1.99 a pound, and that was an excellent deal. So we're doing mass cooking today, quantity cooking today. I'm going to make spaghetti sauce out of it and can it all. So this is what you're going to need. You're going to need your rings and your lids, your jar lifter, lid lifter, some spoons. Sometimes I use this to spoon it into the jars because it's easier. A pot of water for your rings and lids, something to burn your jars with, non-metallic wood or something like this, so it's good. Vinegar, paper towel, something to protect your hands with, a funnel, clean cloth, and a towel to put down so your jars don't hurt your table. So let's get started. I'm going to do the sauce. I put some ground meat in here. It's fully cooked, drained. I put my favorite pasta sauce on there, and I'm just going to build some flavors. So I have some green peppers and yellow peppers and onion. I put big chunks of onion in. Same with my peppers, same with pretty much everything I put in there, because when you put it in the canner, I don't want it to melt to nothing and disappear. I want to have some chunks in there, and the canner has a tendency to melt away onions and peppers and things like that. They get so soft that they just kind of turn into mush. So I'm going to start building it on the countertop here, and then I'm going to move it over to the stove and stew it for a while, and then see where the flavors are. I'm going to dump a can of tomatoes in. I'm going to put some crushed chili in there. And I'm going to make sure that this is a little soupier than I normally like my tomato sauce. Because again, if it's too thick in the canner, it's going to thicken up more. So then you have one big globby, thick paste. So I like to keep it a little bit soupier than normal when I'm canning. This is just an all-purpose Italian seasoning. And garlic plus, I love this. It tends to hold the flavor a little bit, and the flavors do intensify the longer your spaghetti sauce sits on the shelf. Pepper. Oops. And some sea salt. As it's cooking, I will test this. And that is going to be way too thick. I can already tell. But that's okay because we've got some tomato juice that I'm going to put in to thin it out. And then we'll see where we're at with that. One can. I've been cooking all day. I've been doing batch after batch after batch because there's not a pot in the world big enough to hold the amount of spaghetti sauce that I've been doing. This is getting better. So I'm going to put this on the stove. I'm going to test it now and again for flavors, taste, all that stuff, salt. And if it needs to be thinned out even more, I'll do that on the stove. And then I'll come back and we'll start canning. This is how I sterilize my jars. First I inspect them. I throw them in the dishwasher. Even if they were clean and stored, I still put them in the dishwasher. I let them run. Then I put them in the oven. I put them at 375 and bring them to a boil for about 15 minutes. And then when that's done, I'm going to take them with the jar lifter and dump the water and then put them on my workstation. The spaghetti sauce is done. It's been stewing for a while. I put some more salt in there, a couple of more spices and things like that. It's good to go. My canner's been washed out and cleaned for another round. My water level, I don't know if you can see that, but it's about there. I may have to adjust that depending on where it sits when my jars go in the canner. And never forget, put your vinegar in your canner. It'll stop the cloudiness on the jars when you take them out. My lids and rings are steeping away here. I'm not boiling them. You don't want to melt that ring around the lid here. You just want to soften it. So make sure that's not to a boil. It would help if I put the camera on. So I already started filling my jars, but kind of noticed really quick. My jars have cooled down a little bit, so I'm good to go. What I do at my house is I put a meatball in every jar. Whoever gets the meatball does the dishes. That's the rule. So I'll fill another one. Now that I think I'm recording, yeah, I'm recording. Well, there you go. And you want to go to the 1-inch line. And that 1-inch line is the line at the bottom. And I'll show you a little bit closer to that. The camera. This is the 1-inch line right there. That's where I go. That's where I stop. So I'll keep filling these up in the assembly line because it's easier for me that way when you're doing quantity cooking. And that's 1 inch. Next thing you want to do is burp your jars. I already started with the other 3. So you want to run something down, non-metallic, down the sides of the jar and in the center. You want to make sure all of the bubbles are out of there, even with soupy things like spaghetti sauce. You don't want to take any chances. So you run it all along the outside wall and down the center. And you'll do that with all of them. And then the next thing I do is, I'll only do a couple because I don't want to bore you with filling jars. Next thing you want to do is wipe your rims. This is super important, guys. I do it with pure white vinegar, household vinegar. And I make sure that there is nothing on the top of the rims. And I put that aside to let it dry for just a second. Vinegar dries really quick, so it's not going to affect the seal at all, and it's not going to affect the taste at all. It's just a really good habit to get into. Even when I do fruit or potatoes, anything, I do it with vinegar. It's just a really good thing to do. I'm gonna get my lids, and I took the rings out to let them cool a little bit because they were way too hot to handle. And put it on finger tight. Finger tight to me is firm. Just when you hit that first resistance, that's where you stop. To me, anyway, there's a big debate on what is finger firm. To me, it's that first resistance. And it seems to work well for me, so. And then we're gonna make sure you don't touch the top of this or hold it down on the top because you may get a false seal. And finger tight is firm, that first resistance, and that's it. You don't want to crank that top. I'm gonna put the other one on, and I'll continue this all the way down the line, and then we'll put these in the canner. I have my first bottom layer in there, and I know that that water level is not going to fly in this canner. I know my canner very well, and I don't want to run it dry, and it will run dry with that amount of water in it. So I'm going to have to put more. And I know most manuals say 2 to 4 inches and so forth and so on. With my canner, I've been using it for a long time, and I know the level that it will run dry at. So that's a pretty good level. It's 3/4 up the jar, about 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my second stack in there. I'm going to put another tray, the one that's on the bottom. I have another one. I'm going to put it on here, and then I'm going to put the rest of the jars on the top. Canner's full. There's 16 jars in there. I've turned my temperature to high. I'm bringing the temperature up. When this nipple pops up, that's a good indication that there's going to be a full stream of steam coming from here. And then I'm going to put the timer on for 10 minutes and let it stream for 10 minutes. The nipples come up. It's popped up. I don't think that you can see, if I turn it this way, the steam. It's a steady stream of steam. And now I want to set my timer for 10 minutes. Timer's up. It's been steaming for 10 minutes, so I'm going to put my weight on. At my elevation, it's 10 pounds, but make sure when you're canning with your canner, you make sure what your elevation is for your area. So I'm going to put mine on. And when that pops up, I'm going to set my timer for 75 minutes. It's 75 minutes for pint because I have ground meat in there. So it's popping. I set my timer to 75 minutes, and this is what my canner sounds like. And then it goes down. This canner's weight does not jiggle. It's not supposed to jiggle on this canner. It's supposed to pop. 3 to 4 pops per minute at a steady pop. And I'll keep it at that heat for 75 minutes. After 75 minutes, I took it off the burner. I didn't take the weight off. I let it sit for about 45 minutes until the nipple went back down, and that's an indicator to me that it has come down in temperature and it was safe to take the lid off. When it was safe to take the lid off, I took the weight off, the lid off, and there are my jars. And it's not so bad, not so much spillage at all. Sometimes with spaghetti sauce it can get kind of messy, sometimes not, it just depends. And I'd rather not do this with one hand, but I'll try to show you what it looks like out of the canner. And I'm going to walk these over to the table, and I'm going to put them down on the towel, and I'm going to let them sit there for 24 hours. Okay, I'm back. I wanted to show you the bottom of the canner. There's not a lot of spillage at all, and usually with spaghetti sauce, sometimes it can get pretty messy. But if you remember how much water I put in my canner, and the recommended amount of water in the canner is like 2 to 4 inches. If I did that in my canner, it would run dry. I know that. So without me putting that water 3/4 of the way up the jar, my canner would have absolutely run dry. So for 75 minutes, I put all that extra water in, and this is what I have left, that little bit. Now, if that was a 90-minute run, I would have been close to nothing. So get used to your canner, and it's not always the case where the 2 to 4 inches of water is enough. Once you get used to your canner, you'll start understanding it a little bit more and paying attention to the water levels, because some canners, like my Beast here, is a water guzzler, and I learned that a long time ago, so I kind of threw the 2 to 4 inches of water out the window. But that's just my canner. That doesn't mean that yours will do the same. I thought I would let this run for a second, and maybe you can hear the pops, and it'll give you a clear idea of what it should sound like. A couple of them have already popped almost right out of the canner. So I'll give it a second and see. I bet you if I turn the camera off, it will pop. Now that I'm sitting here, it's not going to pop. Oh, there goes one. That's what it sounds like when it seals. A lot of people ask me, what does it sound like? What am I listening for? That's what you're listening for. And it's addictive. Sometimes you don't can for a while, and you know, you hear a can pop somewhere, and you got to run and go can something. Oh, there goes another one. And they do that quite quickly anyway with the things that I do. Sometimes when I lift the lid off the canner, they'll start popping in the canner. And it's rewarding. It's really rewarding to hear that little ping. And it's very rare that I don't have a jar that doesn't seal. It's very rare. So I'm very fortunate with the things that I've been doing so far. And listen for one more. I don't know how many have gone down now. I lost count. Because I have all of this still. All of this. And I'm ready to do another batch. Oh, Lord help me. Okay. Enough sitting down. Those are the little pops. Those are the little pings you should listen for. And after all of this work, after this whole 48 hours of binge canning, that's a really nice sound. My pans have been sitting for 24 hours, so they're good to be washed. And I want to show you how I wash them. You can actually just take a cloth and wash it on the table. But what I like to do, because there's meat in here and it gets kind of greasy, I take the rings off, and I have a lot of these sticks. I take the rings off, put the rings in the sink. Make sure that it's warm water. Don't be scalded though. I put a little bit of soap on my cloth, and I wash the jars just like this with a mild soap. and all the way around the bottom. Rinse them off and put them aside. And I'll dry these really thoroughly too. You want to make sure that you get all the food off your jars. You don't want to attract ants and things like that in your house. So that's how I do my jars. I dry them immediately and I put them aside. And then they will be ready to label and store. And this gives you some opportunity to inspect the jars a little bit closer as well. So this is something that I like to do, is run them under the water. And that's it. Ready to label. Altogether I got, let me see, 91 pints in 7-liter jars. My son already came and took 9 of them. There was only one seal that didn't work, so I'm pretty happy with that considering there was 98 jars. That is really good for just one seal not taking. So I'm happy with that. Needless to say, I'm not going to make spaghetti sauce for a very long time. And if you're thinking about canning, spaghetti sauce is really, it's not that hard to do, and it's very handy in the long run. So until next time, hey do.